Welcome to Mobilizing Tech Talent, Tools to Grow, Attract, and Retain Albertans, a 6-part web series presented by the Information Communications Technology Council as part of a capacity-building program called TADE, Talent Acquisition for the Digital Economy. The objective of TADE is to give small and medium Alberta employers HR tools to help them find, hire, and retain digital talent, which is essential to businesses across sectors to thrive in the digital economy. TADE is a free program funded by the Government of Alberta in partnership with the Government of Canada. A link to the program's resources can be found in the description below. Today, we're taking a look at talent retention and employee development, and joining us to share her expertise in the field is Anette Ceraficki, Director of People and Culture at Kudos. All right, thank you so much for joining us, Annette, and sharing your input and your insights into this topic. So first off, just for the people that don't know, can you kind of give me a bit of a rundown of what Kudos is and how it works?
Absolutely. Yeah, Kudos is HR software that's aimed at supporting team members and giving each other recognition. So HR employee recognition software. The idea is that team members can give each other recognition in the moment when they've done something that is really helpful, either for a project or for just day-to-day work stuff. And the idea is that obviously, well, maybe not obviously to everyone, recognition is one of the components that really leads to employee engagement. So if team members have a way to provide each other with recognition that is easy to use, they will do it, and then that leads to higher engagement.
How important do you feel that it is for employee engagement and recognition when it comes to retaining employees?
Well, it's one of the key elements. If people are engaged, they will stay, they will contribute, their productivity is higher, they'll come up with more innovative solutions for problems, they'll work together better. So it's one of the really key elements. Along with some other drivers of employee satisfaction are opportunities to learn and grow, that they get respect and they have great colleagues, they have a great manager, and obviously, as well, as we mentioned before, recognition and great work that they enjoy and that they can be successful at.
That's awesome. In your journeys and through some of the stories you've heard, I'm sure, of people that have used the tool, what are some of the things that maybe some new ideas or fresh ideas you might have for employers to use and utilize to get more engagement out of their employees to help do retention and make them feel welcome and wanted in the workplace?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? The great thing is that not all of these things have to cost a lot of money, especially smaller organizations don't always have really big budgets. And so the opportunity to do things that don't cost a ton but have a big impact are really important. So one of the things that I hear a lot about from other organizations and that I've witnessed and been a part of in organizations is having a great onboarding experience. Just sort of bringing people in and sitting them down on the first day, introducing them to their computer and telling them to go is not typically a great onboarding experience. Team members need to learn about the business. They need to meet a few new people. And so having that a little bit of time put in ahead of time to make sure that there is that great onboarding experience can have make a big difference. Another one is to have a lot of communication. Surveys have shown that one of the things that team members really like and keeps them engaged is hearing a lot from their leaders, hearing about what's happening with the business, what kind of new initiatives are coming up, what the status is of current initiatives. That doesn't cost anything. It takes a bit of time and you have to be intentional about it. But that communication is really, really important. Also, when we talk about benefits, and maybe we'll talk a bit more about that later, but there are really creative ways to provide wellness and work-life balance that don't have to break the bank. You could, offer, a birthday off, or you can do some, half days in the summertime. Or one of the things that we just started this year is and this is a bit pricier, but honestly, in the bigger scheme of things, we're giving everybody a national park pass wherever they live in Canada. So to encourage people to get out and enjoy the outdoors, that's one innovative thing that I've heard about and that we are actually implementing. And also really walking the talk when you talk about having that flexibility. and that work-life balance. I know it's almost become a bit of a cliche, but it doesn't have to be. You know, people know what a good work-life balance is when they see it. And when they don't see it and they don't have it, they're more likely to be disengaged.
Definitely. Absolutely. You talked about onboarding, and I'm curious to see on just how the flow works when you've brought an employee on, and where employers can kind of identify areas for development of that employee after the onboarding, has kind of taken a bit of place. But I mean, recognition can also obviously have an impact on development of an employee as well. What are some of your thoughts around that area?
Well, as far as development goes, when people are hired, when they're brought on board, obviously they're hired based on a certain job description, a job posting, some job criteria. But never have I hired someone who had 100% of all of the elements that are required exactly the way it's described in the job description. So you could start right there. You can talk about, okay, you're really great at this. Here's an area for development, and then identify those and follow up on them on a regular basis, and support the team member in how they can get better at those things. Recognition as part of regular communication, giving continuous feedback. And constantly coming back to, hey, you know what? You've finally crushed this goal. This is an area that you've developed. Here's the next one. Because for most people, the opportunity to learn and grow and develop their skills is a huge element for retention. And they will leave if they don't see their career going anywhere and they don't feel like there's an opportunity for career development. But if they see that the organization is really committed to their development as a professional and maybe personally as well, that creates a lot of loyalty, which leads to high engagement and retention.
Yeah. You mentioned some of the things that you can do, that might be a little bit more costly, but I think when companies start to take the factors in of what it costs to bring a new employee on and train that employee, it far outweighs what you could have done with just by retaining a past employee that you couldn't hold on because of something internal. So you talked also earlier about work-life balance and how important that is. And I think during this whole pandemic thing, everybody's had a chance to reassess work-life balance. How about opportunities for companies to make sure that their employees' goals align with the company's goals?
Well, those are part of that continuous communication, right? So, you have those conversations on a regular basis with your team member, maybe the beginning of the year. Where do you see yourself 6 months from now? What skills do you want to develop? What do you want to be doing more of? What would you like to be doing less of? But then commit to that, right? Committing to really supporting that. Asking the question and never doing anything is a sure route to lack of engagement. But committing to it, and even if sometimes, if you have a team member who says, I'd like to be a manager by the end of the year, sometimes that's not possible. Sometimes it is. And be honest about it and say, you know what? Can't happen this year, but here are the things that we're going to do to support you and the things that you can do to get yourself closer to that goal. So maybe that's something that we look at next year. So commitment, intentionality, and follow-up are really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned, we talked a little bit about like costs and some of the ideas that you can do. But what are some of the employers with limited budgets on working to do more retention and development? What are some of the things that maybe those guys can do just internally? Maybe it's just operations, maybe it's culture. Like you have a little pizza day or a birthday day, like you said. What are some of those things that you might be able to touch on?
Yeah, that's a great question, because let's face it, most organizations don't have big budgets, right? I mean, I have yet to work in an organization that had an unlimited budget for development. I mean, that's the dream for HR people, but let's face it, that doesn't really happen so much. I do have some great ideas for relatively low cost ways to help develop team members. So maybe I'll start with that. Yeah. And they do take time. And we know that in an organization, time can equal money. But it's a lot less money than paying for like an MBA for somebody, for example. So one of the things that I've seen used really successfully is mentorship programs. So, take the example of that employee who wants to become a manager this year or next year, depending. Put them in a position where they are a mentor for one of their team members, because the best way to learn is to teach. Right. So an informal or formal mentorship program doesn't take a lot of time or energy to set up. And the team members who are either being mentored or mentees can really, really benefit from it, learning on the job. That kind of ties maybe to job shadowing as well. So if somebody wants to learn some skills they don't currently have, you don't have the budget to send them on a university or college program, maybe they can job shadow someone, learn some of the skills that someone else has. I'll tell you, everything I know about Excel, I learned from one of my team members. That can be really, really helpful. Other opportunities are stretch assignments. So, putting someone on projects where they are given the opportunity to learn about things that they didn't know before. That person, needs to be supervised by their manager or someone who understands the direction that this project is going. But first of all, the sense of satisfaction they'll get from completing that assignment. And don't forget recognition at the end of it, right? Recognition that they're putting the extra effort in, recognition that they're doing really well is incredibly important. And one other thing I'd mention that I've seen used really well and is virtually cost-free are employee-led learning sessions. So maybe lunch and learns, right? So say I have expertise in a topic. Let's just say it happens to be interviewing. And there are lots of people in my organization who could benefit from getting better at interviewing. I'd be more than happy to put on a lunch hour session where we all get together and I can speak and we could do some breakout rooms and learn new skills on something that's important to the organization and that I have some skill at, and I'm happy to contribute. So those are some ideas that honestly do not cost a ton, but can have a huge impact, and also creates, it builds team, that sort of team atmosphere. It's almost like a team building activity to do some of these things, which can have a big impact.
Well, and I know having a leader come down, from the office and spend time with the people on the floor or pot time with people in the more common workspace goes miles when it comes to just respect for, like you said, like building a team, right? So absolutely. Has there anything in the last, say year and a half, just with the current situation of the world, that may have popped out and surprised you on what you've seen, maybe some stories or some examples you have about retaining and development for employees?
Well, the whole remote work situation has had a huge impact, and it's had impacts that I never would have foreseen. None of us thought this would happen, right? Literally 2 years ago. So 2 years ago is the end of February. I had hiring managers who said, no, I can't hire anybody outside of Calgary. I need the team to be here because we work better together when we're in person. No hiring remotely. A month later, we had no choice. Absolutely no choice. And now we're in a situation where people are leaving jobs when they think they're not going to be able to continue to work remotely. We've heard about the Great Resignation. And one of the things that has come out of that is team members saying, I want the flexibility that I've had for the last 2 years. I don't want to lose that. Maybe I don't want to be remote full time. So now that's leading to hybrid work environments. But people are literally leaving when organizations force them to be there in person all the time. Now, we are talking about, a little bit more about tech, a little bit about people who can do their jobs outside the office, but it has led to a lot of people making other choices. And who knows where that's going to go? It's really interesting.
It is. Yeah, absolutely. Now, how about with that in mind, development? It's tough when you can't be one-on-one. We're such a face-to-face and communal species. Not being one-on-one, it's tough to kind of mentor and coach. What are your thoughts around some of the pitfalls that we might be running into there, and what employees might be able to do to combat that?
Well, it's a good question, and it's one that I think the answer is about intentionality and planning. So it may be that in the old work style where everybody was in the office, there were lots of opportunities. And I think this is where the whole recognition falling off after people worked to remote came into place. In the olden style days, we could be in a meeting, somebody could do something or make a comment or, have an impact. And as we walk out of the meeting, we could say, hey, thanks so much for bringing that up in the meeting. That's a big help. that's going to help push the project along. Whereas when we're working remotely, it doesn't happen by accident. So I think the solution in what is probably the future of work, which is there's a lot more remote development, remote interaction, is team leaders have to make sure that they schedule those meetings. Make sure you meet with your team members on a regular basis to be able to have those ongoing development conversations, because they're not going to happen by accident.
Yeah, consistency is key.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's so funny when you say olden days. I mean, we're talking like, a year and a half, 2 years ago. I always look at like just looking through Kudos and how the digital world has changed how we interact with one another, and where we look for recognition now on a public stage. Back then, it used to be Employee of the Month. You have the poster up in the work office or in the lunchroom, and now we've got these great digital tools that can actually amplify that message, and I think be more meaningful to employees when they get that kind of recognition, and that makes them want to stay because they feel like they're making a difference, and that's really important.
Yeah, and it is more of a public forum. So our tool, as well as other tools that provide recognition, are public in the office environment. So there's almost like a recognition wall. So if I'm giving recognition to someone and I post on there, you can do it privately, but most times people choose to do public recognition, and then other people will, like it, just like other social media tools. And it does provide a lot of satisfaction for people to know that they're on the right track for the culture that they're in, for the team they're a part of, and the extra, let's face it, it's extra effort that gets rewarded, right? So the extra effort that they make.
Well, and then that might lead to what we hope more self-development, where someone sees that, oh, I did that extra effort, I learned something new, I got the recognition, I like that, I get a taste for it, and now I want to learn a new skill so I can contribute more. And we talk about that in other episodes about, being very transparent with your company's goals, very transparent with your direction. We've been talking about ESG, with especially social and governance within companies. And I think that can go a long way with both the retention and the development, and then everybody wins at the end of the day. Yeah, good stuff.
Right.
Thank you so much, Anette, for coming in and talking to us about this. This was fantastic. Great information. And I think our employers are really going to get a real value out of this. It kind of hammers the nail home on those tools that aren't necessarily expensive, that are out there and tactics that aren't necessarily expensive out there to utilize and be successful.
It's been a real pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.